Hey, Cindy, guess what?
What?
We now have an Alexa skill on the Amazon Alexa skill marketplace.
Really? That's cool.
It's called Dream 10X. So all you got to do is search for Amazon Alexa skills, and then once they're on that website, search for Dream 10X, and you can enable the Dream 10X podcast player. And so it provides a voice user interface to our podcast, so you can control it with your voice. You can say, Alexa, tell Dream 10X to find episodes about money.
I found one match for money. Episode 20, The Snowball by Alice Schroeder.
That's so
Meditations
cool.
on the Oracle of Omaha.
Alexa, tell Dream 10X to tell me more about episode 20.
Here is a summary of Episode 20, The Snowball by Alice Schroeder. Meditations on the Oracle of Omaha. Can you imagine being a stockbroker in 1929 during one of the largest stock market crashes in American history?
No.
Howard Buffett, Warren Buffett's dad.
Wow.
Warren
So
Buffett was born
Alexa,
just 10
you can
months.
search for different keywords that are really exciting. And
Or that interest you.
That interest
Yeah.
you, and then you can have Alexa find those podcasts that are relevant
Yeah, and then of course you can play them.
and get a summary about them.
Yeah.
What a great tool.
Thanks. It's written in Python if anybody cares. It's a Python Alexa skill. It was a lot of fun to write, sort of. But check it out. Hi, and thank you for listening to Dream 10X Radio, where we interview people attempting to live extraordinary lives. Our twofold purpose is to both direct and inspire people bold enough to do the same. Dream 10X. Face your fears and make your life count. Hello, Dream 10X world. It's your boy JC.
And Dr. C.
How's it going?
Good, how are you doing?
Good. Oh, I wasn't asking you. I was asking our listeners.
Oh.
But you can respond for them. That's
Well,
great.
since I'm sitting in the room, I thought it was kind of nice to respond. Oh, you asked me about my day.
I was asking for our listener. Hey, welcome to episode 21.
Hey,
And
Claudia, our listener.
Shout out to Claudia
Escribano.
We heard that she listens on occasion, so that's really cool. For this week, we're reviewing a book that I read called The Ride of a Lifetime by Robert Iger. Who's Robert Iger?
He's my hero.
Now he's your hero.
Yeah. Now that I listened to his masterclass like 5 times.
Who is he?
He's the CEO of Disney.
Robert, I want to call him Bob, but it's Mr. Iger, I guess, for us. But Robert Iger is the CEO of Disney. And I wanted to kind of analyze his career arc for this podcast and look at the jobs he held and how he progressed throughout his career to eventually become the CEO of Disney. Just out of curiosity, see if there's something I can learn there. I found it really fascinating that he started his career at ABC, which ABC stands for the American Broadcasting Company. And he's essentially been with the same company now for 45 years.
I can't imagine that. Can you?
45 years with basically the same company.
Yeah.
And there's just been a lot of, I guess you could call it metaphorical waves rolling through the company, and he's like ridden every single wave, and eventually these waves have taken him to the very top of, well, the Disney Corporation. So the way it happened for him is he had an uncle who had some eye surgery and was in the hospital. He went to go visit his uncle, and his roommate in the hospital was this guy who's pretending to be a bigwig executive at ABC. And his uncle mentioned to this alleged bigwig ABC executive that his nephew was looking for a job in New York, and to play his role up a little bit better, he said, there's no problem. I'll get him a job at ABC. No big deal. So he did. He eventually got him a job at ABC, but come to find out, he wasn't a bigwig executive. Nevertheless, he was able to get him a job, and he became a studio supervisor at ABC in 1974. Prior to that, he was a news weatherman for a tiny station in Ithaca, New York.
No kidding. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So this guy who was pretending to be a bigwig got him in the door at ABC. got him into a very low-level, entry-level position. And the way he puts it in the book is he basically started out at the lowest rung on the ladder at ABC for his first job there.
Wow.
So basically started out, getting coffee and doing all these things for various shows and game shows that ABC was hosting at the time. I don't remember all the exact show names, but that's basically what he was doing. And he was making about $150 a week there when he first started out.
In 1974.
1974.
Yeah, so probably like $24,000 a day.
Yeah, something like that. He mentions early on that his job required him to get up really early in order to help these television shows record and prepare for the recordings and mess with the lights and all that stuff. So since that time, he's been a really early riser. So he's one of those guys who gets up at 04:15 in the morning and seems to relish his quiet time. Likes to think and read and exercise in those early morning hours.
Yeah, he said in the master class that he gets up at 4:15, as you said, and then he likes to work out in the dark, which I found really interesting.
Why?
Because he says he has the space to think and process, and he listens to quiet music, but he likes to be in the dark when he works out.
Huh. Tell me more. What master class are you talking about?
So masterclass, if you guys don't know, is a fantastic platform where they interview successful people from all kinds of genres, from music to business people to creative arts. It's just awesome. And so I have an annual subscription, and that's what I listen to when I'm walking the dog or running, because that's how I learn. And so I've listened to the Bob Iger one 3 times now, and I just love it. So Masterclass is a really awesome mechanism to gain information in short microbytes.
Do you find Masterclass beneficial? Are you learning stuff from it?
Oh yeah, so there's a gardening one that's awesome, and the head of Vogue, I've learned so much from her. I would love to talk with her more about some of her strategies for creative development. I've learned so much.
Yeah, there's I also subscribe, but I haven't listened to any classes. Although I did listen to Sarah Blakely's class.
Oh, you'd love that.
And I found that really pretty informative.
Yeah.
So I am also interested in listening to that Gary Kasparov Learn to Play Chess.
Oh yeah, that one looks
Probably
really
not
good.
from a beginner's perspective, but that one looks good. There's a Tony Hawk one on how to skate.
That one's really good.
I want to do that.
Yeah, we listened to the Armin one together.
Armin van Buuren one. Yep.
Judy Bloom had a great one on writing, which I really appreciated, from being a teenager or a teenager in elementary school reading her books. So, yeah.
Dead Mouse is on there too. So
Anyway.
cool. So the Robert Iger one is good.
Yeah.
You like that?
I love it.
Okay. Sweet. So more on why he likes to get up in the morning, which stuck out at me on page 9. He says, "However you find the time, it's vital to create space in each day to let your thoughts wander beyond your immediate job responsibilities, to turn things over in your mind in a less pressured, more creative way than is possible once the daily triage kicks in."
He said the same thing in the masterclass, which, that's one thing. We just don't have that in U.S. culture. We don't have the space to just think.
Yeah. So we've talked about that before, and here it is again. It's important to find space in your professional life and your life to just think. So then he runs into an ethics conflict with one of his bosses, and he discovers that his boss is not acting ethically and using company resources for his own personal gain. Basically, his boss identifies him as having an awareness of his pretty illegal activities, and overtly threatens him and says, "Look, you're not promotable anymore. You need to go look for another job."
Wow.
So at that point, he looks internally on the internal ABC job listing and finds an opening at ABC Sports. And so he applies for a job there, and he ultimately gets it. And as fate would have it, ABC Sports was one of the more profitable areas of ABC. But ABC's Wide World of Sports, you remember
I remember that. Yep.
spanning the globe to bring you the constant variety of sport, the thrill of victory, and the agony of
that
defeat.
guy like totally wrecking on the downhill skiing thing at the
I'm hearing the
intro.
theme song right now.
Yeah, so that outfit made a lot of money, and they kind of lived high on the hog. He traveled all over the world working for ABC Sports, and just seemed to be a really good experience for him. He worked for a guy named Rune Arledge. I forget exactly what his role was there, but he was a big mentor for him and really a stickler for production and details. And so he mentions that Mr. Arledge taught him a lot about the need to strive for excellence. And so he kind of a lot of those ideals from this guy early on at ABC. One of the things he says that Rune Arledge said was, do what you need to do to make it better. Do whatever you need to do to make something better. So that jumped out at me too, because I like that idea. Like, really seek excellence in whatever you do and try to do whatever you can do to make it better.
I love that.
And he mentions that because of that theme, he kind of latched on to the Jiro Dreams of Sushi.
Oh, no kidding. We saw that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how the sushi maker spends years and years and years fine-tuning his sushi-making craft. Mm-hmm. And how his sushi is so expensive because it's such a well-crafted delicacy.
It's art.
And in fact, he showed that movie to a number of people within the company to kind of share that mentality of, attention to detail and excellence and how important that is.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And from a learning perspective, what a great tool.
Yeah, there's he mentions a concept called skokunin, which I think is a Japanese concept as well, which means the endless pursuit of perfection for some greater good. Ooh. Skokunin. And he tied that to the movie Jiro Dreams of Sushi, which is a really excellent movie in and of itself. So I really liked all those ideas right there. The endless pursuit of perfection for some greater good. Love that. All right, so he eventually becomes the VP of ABC Sports at age 35. He's only 35 and now he's the VP.
I can't even imagine.
But then his life was about to really change when Capital Cities Communications comes onto the scene. Capital Cities Communications is this little tiny media company in the New York area. And they make a bid to buy ABC. This is such a great story. It's really underplayed, I think, the magnitude of what actually happened. But in the book, anyway. Capital Cities Communications was headed by two guys named Tom Murphy and Dan Burke. And these guys happened to be friends with Warren Buffett.
Tap back into Warren.
Yeah, so segue back to episode 20 where we talk about Warren Buffett. Here he is again, having a huge impact on the future of the Disney Corporation.
That's incredible.
Vis-a-vis Cap Cities, vis-a-vis ABC. Mm-hmm. So these guys, Cap Cities Communications, make a bid for ABC, and they're able to pull off the purchase for $3.5 billion. And so they're like a nobody. They came out of nowhere. ABC is like this huge conglomerate, and they weren't expecting them to be able to come out of nowhere and a small little company and buy them. But they were able to. They ultimately bought them for $3.5 billion from backing by Warren Buffett. And so Tom Murphy and Dan Burke, then, they had a lot of the meat and potatoes, down-home, Midwestern kind of idealism that Warren Buffett had. So they all kind of were and they were very frugal. And so when they purchased the company, they took away a lot of the big spending habits that certain segments had, like ABC Sports. And so all of a sudden, everybody had to start cutting back, and they built a lot of resentment in the company because of that. But this was one of the core reasons that they were so successful and why they were able to grow so quickly, is because of their frugal, mentality. Eventually, Bob Iger gets noticed by Tom Murphy and Dan Burke. He's participating in the Calgary Olympics that ABC Sports is covering, and he gets noticed by the way he handles things at the Olympics. Tom and Dan notice Robert Iger at the Olympics, and they say, hey, we really like how you handled the Olympics in Calgary. We'd like you to come in and be the head of ESPN.
Wow.
Yeah, so now he's only 37 years
Yeah.
old. So 2 years after becoming the VP of ABC Sports, he's now head of ESPN. And now he has Tom Murphy and Dan Burke in his corner backing his career.
Unbelievable.
And so now his train is just really starting to roll down the tracks.
Yeah.
And what's really important here is that the idea that your career is, it's not just you running things. You need support from people. Mm-hmm. And he was able to garner the support of really two strong heavy hitters. I mean, these guys are friends with Warren Buffett. So he basically came out of nowhere and got backing by these two huge guys. All right, so head of ESPN now. And soon thereafter, he becomes the head of ABC Entertainment. When the previous head got fired, and Tom Murphy and Dan Burke said, "Hey, we want you to take this guy's position. We just fired him. We want you to move out to LA and become the head of ABC Entertainment." So again, those two guys are saying, "Hey, we like what you're doing. We like how you're doing it. We want you to move up into this other role." And so when he was at ABC Entertainment, this is when he and his team started pumping out shows like Twin Peaks.
Oh, I loved that show in the 80s.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Never saw it.
Who killed Laura?
Yeah, he mentioned that. That was like a really famous phrase.
Oh, yeah.
I had no idea what they were talking about. Cop Rocks.
Oh, I saw that too.
Really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wasn't that kind of stupid?
Oh, it was totally cheesy, but I like cheese.
Doogie Howser?
He did Doogie Howser. I didn't know that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Then in 1992, El Presidente of ABC retires. And guess who Dan Burke wants to make as president of ABC?
Bob Iger.
Robert Iger. So, unfortunately, though, that position is back in New York City. So he's out in LA doing this thing. He's like, hey, will you come to New York City now and be the president of ABC? He's like, all right, I'll do that. He's 43 years old. That's 1992. Then, 2 years later, in 1994, Tom Murphy tapped Iger to be the president and CEO role of Cap Cities ABC when the incumbent retired there. So he's just rolling. He's just getting, at this point, they're just pushing him further and further up the chain. And it's basically these two guys. I mean, I can't imagine that you're making that much of a difference in a year or two in your career. But they like what he's doing, they like who he is, and they're pushing him up the corporate ladder there. And the other really interesting thing to me that happened at that time. So now this is 94. He's the president and COO of Cap Cities ABC. And they take a trip to Sun Valley, Idaho. Remember me talking about that in context of Warren Buffett?
Can you refresh?
And in the Snowball, the book that we talked about last episode, opens with Warren Buffett and his family getting off of their personal jet at Sun Valley, Idaho, to go to this Allen and Company retreat that they have every summer.
So it's the same place.
So now he's at the same place.
Wow.
Because apparently if you've got a lot of money, a lot of power, this is where everybody goes. If you get an invite, this is where you go. Like, no, I don't know of anybody who really turns this down. So he's now in Sun Valley. He sees Michael Eisner, who is the then CEO of Walt Disney, talking to Tom Murphy and Warren Buffett in the parking lot. And at that time, he realizes they're talking about a possible acquisition. And it's really interesting how it segues back to the snowball that we just read last episode. Wasn't planning that again, so it's kind of cool. So this is 1994. They're in Sun Valley, Idaho, at the Allen and Company retreat. Eisner is there. They're rubbing shoulders with Tom Burke and Warren Buffett. I'm sure they're strategizing about an acquisition and how that would work and who would lead it and all that good stuff. And then sure enough, in 1995, Eisner and Disney buy Cap Cities. Cap City / ABC. And they bring Iger on a 5-year contract to be the potential second man in charge of Disney at that time.
Incredible.
I mean, how do you put together a career like that on purpose?
It's true.
You know? That's just crazy. So that acquisition of Cap Cities ABC almost doubled the size of Disney. So at that time, Eisner was already stretched really thin, trying to manage everything. So it made sense that he should have a second in command to help, given the new size of the company. And so Robert Iger really wanted to be that second in command to help, lead this company. But I don't think, based on my interpretation of the book, I don't think Eisner really trusted Iger for whatever reason. And maybe he was like trying to keep him at arm's length because he didn't want him taking his job. Maybe he felt a little jealous of him, whatever. I don't know. But Eisner ended up bringing in this guy named Michael Ovitz. So I think Michael Ovitz was part of Universal, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
So he brought him in as the second in command there, as president. And apparently the guy did nothing. This is such a great story. So he comes in as the second in command, doesn't seem to be interested at all in what the company's doing. He's got his own. He's rubbing elbows with presidents and Obama and all these other big wigs and Michael Jackson and whoever, but not really paying attention to his job. He ends up, after a while, everybody realizes that he's not really doing anything, so they usher him out the door. But, oh, by the way, he's going to get paid $100 million severance.
Holy cow!
So how do we do something like that?
Right? I'll fail.
You do nothing. You basically get fired. You get paid $100 million. Yeah, I think I'm totally looking at things wrong. So then in 1999, Robert Iger takes a 2-week vacation to Martha's Vineyard with his family. And apparently it's the first 2-week vacation that he's had in forever, if not the first time.
He works so hard.
Yeah, and right before he starts his vacation, he gets a call from Tom Murphy. Hey, Tom, I'm really sorry, but Michael Eisner doesn't like you. And he said there's no way you're going to get hired as this. You're going to come on as either co-CEO, or take his role as CEO.
Yeah.
You got to get out of there. You just got to quit. And so this is the way he started his 2-week vacation that he had.
Oh, man. It's probably good it was at the start of the vacation so we could sit in process.
No! Who wants to do a beginning of a vacation with that news, man?
Because you could sit and process and think about what you want to do versus being reactive. So it gives you a chance to...
Yeah, I don't know. I just read that. That just made me sick. I was like, man, that's horrible. But the good news is he didn't talk about it during the vacation. I don't think his wife even knew about it. Mm-hmm. And he refused to quit.
I love that.
He refused to quit because he was due a bonus, which is even better. Never quit when you're due a bonus. Plus, that other guy left with $100 million.
Yeah.
So the message there is don't leave until you line up that $100 million. So yeah, he had a bonus coming, and he decided not to quit. And he said, if Eisner wants to fire me, he's got to do it to my face, which I love.
Yeah.
That was really ballsy. I love that. And so Michael Eisner eventually did not fire him. And in fact, he eventually asked him to go back out to LA to help run run Disney, but their relationship was always kind of tenuous. But I think for those reasons that he wasn't sure how to. Eisner, I think, didn't really. He was scared of getting eclipsed by his mentor. I think. I'm not really sure, but that's what it seemed like. And the interesting thing then at this time, now that he's kind of a number 2 man at Disney, maybe not, I don't know, but he's out in LA, and then Roy Disney starts getting upset with the way that Eisner is running the company. And he's really upset that Michael Eisner had them buy Capital Cities, because Capital Cities it's not a Disney brand. It had nothing. He was worried about that company tainting the company's bloodstream, the pure Disney bloodstream. So he didn't really like Eisner. And but Disney was still on the board, and then Eisner figured out a way that, you're 70 years old now, and because of our laws, you shouldn't be on our board anymore. So somehow he figured out a way to get Roy Disney off of the board. And that made him even more mad. Yeah. So Roy Disney and his lawyer waged this holy war against Eisner outside the company and went to the media, and, it just got really messy. So Eisner became kind of persona non grata at that time. That kind of cleared the way for Robert Iger to then become CEO. However, the company had to go through a whole bunch of, interviews, and they had to hire executive headhunters to bring in candidates to interview, and it just took a whole long time, and really painful process. But at the end of it, Robert Iger eventually becomes the CEO of Disney.
Yeah, in the masterclass he says, I was the only internal candidate.
Only internal candidate.
Yeah, that's unbelievable.
Yeah, in fact, there was a Meg Whitman.
Oh, I like her.
She was one of the candidates for CEO. So now here he is, head of Disney. I don't think you can duplicate that. No, I don't think you can duplicate that career path. But it's really interesting to look at and just to kind of marvel at.
And I wonder how he was developed through that process, because obviously, maybe he was just very natural at being able to lead.
Obviously, you have to be.
Yeah, but he talks about, like, in the masterclass, one thing that really struck me was leading with creativity and creating that strategy first. And when he was in line to take over as the presidency, and he had to compete against all these people, one of his colleagues and outside of Disney came to him and said, all right, what's your strategy for making Disney amazing? Mm-hmm. And apparently Bob Iger was listing all these things, and the guy did a fake yawn and said, no, you need 3 things, and this is what you're focusing on, and one of the top things is creativity. And so for me, that spoke volumes to me. And so, I mentioned Claudia at the beginning because listening to this podcast, she totally came to mind over and over again, because she's literally one of the most creative, thoughtful people I know. And she's able to ingest information and then switch it back out to clients. Anything from taking a drag queen cooking class through Airbnb and how can I transform this into a learning culture in an organization. And so for me, I really admire that, and I want to embrace that and how I operate in the world and with my strategic vision for my organization. So it was just it was a really nice connection to say there are people and that creativity is a strategy, and it does work. I mean, obviously
it's hugely important.
Yeah,
that is your secret sauce. That is a company's secret sauce. That is what distinguishes companies from the others. That's your moat. And from a Disney's perspective, that's absolutely critical.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, and they have to embrace that and be able to take risks. So when he talks about bringing Pixar and Marvel into the company, I found that really interesting too, because they're very unique brands and the value system are different. So how do you integrate such wildly different cultures and values and create a new organization from that while retaining those similar experiences? Yeah,
those 3 principles that you mentioned, he mentioned he keyed on those because he was able to simplify what he wanted to push, the direction he wanted to push this huge company into in 3 simple using 3 simple principles. And those are: quality would matter most. You need to embrace technology and disruption rather than fear it. Embrace it.
That was my favorite.
And expansion into new markets would be vital.
Yeah. And understanding your markets, he talks about. So not just expansion, but like doing a deep dive. Because he said when he took over, like Disney was global, but it was very superficial. So like really getting out there and experiencing the people and understanding what they want from a deeper perspective, and you can give better product.
Yeah, one of the big things he did was expand Disney into Shanghai.
Yeah.
On a 963-acre campus there, which is the biggest campus in the world, I think, for a Disney theme park.
Is it really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, and he made something like 70 flights to China to get that park up and running.
Amazing.
So the amount of value he was able to add to shareholders, Disney shareholders, was incredible, and he did a lot of it through acquisition. At the time he took over, Disney Animation was flailing, and he wasn't sure, and the people that worked in it weren't sure how to get their mojo back.
Yeah.
And so one of his approaches for doing that, which is ironic given how upset Roy Disney was about acquiring companies that weren't of Disney bloodlines, he acquired Pixar from Steve Jobs.
And I love that he was so nervous to talk to Steve Jobs. He said he was sitting in the car and he was sweating, but he wasn't sure if it was the heat or they was pitching a crazy idea.
I was so glad to hear that, because I was
He's
like,
human!
That would be me. I'd be really nervous to talk to Steve Jobs.
Yeah, totally.
And the other just kind of beautiful thing about that whole Pixar acquisition was that on the day that deal was supposed to be signed between Disney and Pixar, Steve Jobs took Robert Iger on a walk, and he sat down on a bench and he put his arm around Bob and he said, "I am dying of cancer.
Oh.
And I don't expect you to go through with this deal. I give you permission to unwind this deal as a result of my health."
Oh my gosh.
And Robert Iger said, "Thank you for telling me, but we're still going to do this." And I thought that was really, what great men, both of them. Steve Jobs on the one hand being completely honest about his health and saying, "Look, I'm not going to be here to help, probably not going to be around to help you, merge these two companies and make Pixar great inside of Disney. It's going to be on all you. But at the same time, if you want to back away from this deal as a result, I totally respect your choice." And then on Rob Iger's side, "Thank you for telling me, thank you for your honesty, but we're still going to move forward with that." And basically saved Pixar.
Yeah. Yeah.
And gave them a new life and a new raison d'etre inside of Disney.
Plus, like Bob Iger, how he talks about negotiations, how he's like, "This is it. This is what we got. I'm totally transparent," and setting that positive, authentic tone. I mean, these are things that I really value in organizations and with people, and it's really hard to find out these days.
Yeah, I also picked up on how he approaches deal making.
Yeah.
Doesn't want to low bid anybody.
Yeah.
What's the point?
Yeah.
If people are just going to keep ratcheting up and spending time and money paying lawyers to keep raising the bid, just tell them what your max bid is or thereabouts, and be totally transparent about it.
Yeah, I love that.
Because that's the way I am. I like that. I appreciate that. You got a number, give it to them. If you can't go higher, give them your max number and let that be your deal.
Yeah.
And be prepared to walk away. So that was good too. The other thing I really enjoyed was learning about how Marvel had their business structured. I think Ike Perlmutter was the head of Marvel at the time, and he's another interesting character I want to read more about. But they had a book of 7,000 comic characters with backstories. And I could just picture how valuable that would be to somebody who's looking to acquire you.
Yeah.
Because you've got a catalog
Yep.
that you can hand over and say, "Hey, we've got 7,000 characters. We could be writing movies for decades on these characters."
Yay, comics!
Not only that, but they had scripts that had been written for movies for a lot of those characters.
Oh, awesome.
And so they had a pipeline of movies that they wanted to create at the time Iger came along and looked at them for acquisition.
All I know is She-Hulk is coming out soon, and I am so excited.
So I just thought that was a really valuable lesson, that if, as a business, it pays to have a clear direction of where you're going with, clear documentation. That catalog just really stuck out to me. Like, I could just picture myself as an investor in a company and them saying, hey, here's what we have. Here's a catalog of all of our creativity.
Yeah.
Boom. This is why we're so valuable. Like, that's just so plain and obvious. Like that's a 10x play right there.
Heck yeah.
So I really enjoyed reading about the Marvel acquisition, and the Pixar acquisition was just wonderful. It's just beautiful, just like everything that Jobs did, in life and in action and professional everything. Lucasfilm was also intriguing, and I felt like George Lucas, this was his legacy, and like he said in the book that on his tombstone, George Lucas is going to say, "Here lies the creator of Star Wars." So this is how important Star Wars is to George Lucas, and how difficult it was for him to sell the company. But one thing Lucasfilm didn't seem to have, according to the book, was a pipeline of new movie releases and ideas.
So
they
was
were
just
living
the
off of their
legacy.
legacy of what they already had and the technologies they had built to do the things that they had done in the past, but not something they had for the future. Nevertheless, that brand is hugely well known, globally known, and globally valuable. And so they did that acquisition as well. And then, of course, I think Force Awakens came out after that, and Mandalorian, and what else? So, some other things. But those movies didn't exist until Robert Iger came along and talked to George Lucas and said, "Hey, I'm interested in buying you. What do you got?" And then all of a sudden, George Lucas starts writing scripts.
Crap, I gotta write stuff.
I think I had that right. He started writing scripts and said, "Hey, here's three movies that I would want to do in the near future." Of course, then he got upset when he got purchased and they didn't stick to his script.
That's another story.
But that's what happens when you get, when you sell.
That's true.
And it can be painful when you've put so much of your life into the business that you're building. Case in point was Rupert Murdoch's Fox companies. 20th Century, is it 20th? Yeah, 20th Century Fox. And this was another really fascinating angle. I don't want to go on and on about this, but this was a really fascinating angle in that Rupert Murdoch and his sons were looking, to take over the company. And this is another, he started this company from scratch and very deeply rooted into the family. And now he's interested in selling it. And so his sons, I think, were a little upset about the whole thing. But the totality of the deal was so big. Like, Rupert Murdoch that's a really big name. The other interesting thing is he's conservative. Rupert Murdoch is conservative. Fox News, very conservative news network. Apparently Bob Iger is not. He's a Democrat, whatever. Not that really mattered in this case, but it does to an extent, because at the time, Robert Iger was thinking of running about president. He played around with the idea of running for president.
I so would have voted for him.
President of the United States.
He would have been brilliant.
I would have voted for him. Totally. But I think this whole the irony is, I think this whole Rupert Murdoch acquisition took him off of that game plan, because then he had to focus on this and pulling in most of the company assets of 20th Century Fox, which also included National Geographic. I thought that was interesting. I didn't know National Geographic was part of 20th Century Fox.
I did know that. I didn't realize I got bought by Disney.
Yeah, it did not include Fox News. So Disney does not own Fox News. Just TV, the film and TV part of it, FX, Fox Networks. I'm not sure how I don't think that includes Fox News. Star India. So that was an interesting angle to me. It seemed like the acquisition of a conservative media conglomerate took Bob Iger out of the potential running for president. That and his wife. I don't think his wife wanted him to run for president.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is basically my take on the career arc of Robert Iger's run from the bottom rung of the ladder at ABC to the very top, tippity top of Disney. Just like Steven Schwartz did in the back of his book, Robert Iger has some good quotable lessons learned in the back of his book, and I wanted to read some of those. This first one, he says, I talk a lot about the relentless pursuit of perfection. In practice, this could mean a lot of things, and it's hard to define. It's a mindset more than a specific set of rules. It's not about perfectionism at all costs. It's about creating an environment in which people refuse to accept mediocrity. I really like that. Death to mediocrity. It's about pushing back against the urge to say good enough is good enough. I love that. It takes work to push back on mediocrity and strive for something above that, better than that.
Yes, it does.
It's hard. He also says, excellence and fairness does not have to be mutually exclusive. Strive for perfection, but always be aware of the pitfalls of caring only about the product and never the people. So you got to weigh that against running over people in pursuit of perfection. Another one is, don't be in the business of playing it safe. Be in the business of creating possibilities for greatness. That's a good one. Don't let ambition get ahead of opportunity. By fixating on a future job or project, you become impatient with where you are. You don't tend enough to the responsibilities you do have, and so ambition can become counterproductive.
That's me.
Good lesson to learn. We all want to believe we're indispensable. You have to be self-aware enough that you don't cling to the notion that you are the only person who can do this job. At its essence, good leadership isn't about being indispensable. It's about helping others be prepared to step into your shoes.
Oh, I love that.
I do too. One of the best quotes I think he gives, he took from, it's an ideal he took from Michael Eisner. And it's great is often a collection of very small things after all. That's my favorite.
Say it again.
Favorite quote. Quote unquote great is often a collection of very small things after all. It's an aggregation of very small efforts, very small shots of perfection.
I love that.
And in the context of Michael Eisner, it's about micromanaging, because Michael Eisner did a lot of micromanaging because he was a real perfectionist about the smallest details. And then he's got one here that I underlined. No one wants to follow a pessimist, so I gotta keep remembering that.
That's why you married an optimist.
I'm very pessimistic. Technological advancements will eventually make older business models obsolete.
Heck yes.
So don't be scared of technology and innovation. Embrace it. A lot of companies acquire others without much sensitivity toward what they're really buying. They think they're getting physical assets or manufacturing assets or intellectual property. But usually what they're really acquiring is people. In creative business, that's where the value lies.
Absolutely.
That's the secret
All about
sauce.
people.
It's the people and the creativity they bring to the table. I
And
mean,
the culture.
when you think of Pixar and Marvel, and,
Yeah.
I mean, come on, animations, the Disney animation, it's just critical.
Yeah.
And I think any company can become even greater by focusing on how creative they can be, their creative assets.
Absolutely. Creating a culture of creativity and feedback and risk. I mean, you can be so powerful as a culture.
Yeah. And finally, my most favorite quote is this one. If you're in the business of making something, be in the business of making something great. Drop the microphone right there. That's just fantastic.
That's beautiful.
I really like this book. Robert Iger is a really calming. His voice is very calming. I totally get why he's a great leader. I love his quotes in the back. Love the stories. Love Loved the acquisitions of Pixar, Marvel, Lucasfilm, and even Fox. Really fascinating. Good lessons there.
Yeah.
Highly recommend The Ride of a Lifetime by Robert Iger
And if you don't want to read the whole book, I highly recommend listening to the masterclass.
So thanks for listening. We'll be back here in a week or two.
Sounds good.
Cheers.
Bye.